My brother dumped his kids on my porch and texted, "Thanks for watching them again." I immediately smiled and dialed 911. It was 6:42 on a Friday evening when I heard 3 quick knocks on my front door. I was in the kitchen making dinner when I looked through the window and saw my brother Jake's SUV pulling away from the curb. I opened the door. His 2 kids, Tyler 13 and Lily 9, were standing on my porch with backpacks, a grocery bag, and confused expressions. "Where's Dad?" I asked. Tyler pointed toward the street. "He said you were watching us." My phone buzzed. "Jake, thanks for watching them again. Really appreciate it." I stared at the message for a few seconds. Again, that word had been doing a lot of work lately. Jake had been leaving his kids with me for months. At first, it was occasional, a doctor's appointment, a late shift, an emergency. Then emergencies started happening every weekend. He'd drop them off without asking. Sometimes he wouldn't even come to the door. He'd text, "They're outside." I complained to my parents more than once. Mom always sighed and said, "They're your nephew and niece. What are you going to do? Leave them outside?" Dad had been even more blunt. "Jake has enough going on. You're single. You have the room." That was their answer to everything. Jake needed help. I had room. Therefore, my time belonged to him. I had tried setting boundaries before. Jake would apologize, promise it wouldn't happen again, and then do exactly the same thing the following week. But that Friday was different. I looked at Tyler and Lily. "Did your dad say where he was going?" Tyler shook his head. He said he had plans. "What kind of plans?" He shrugged. Lily quietly said, "He said he was meeting his girlfriend." I looked back at my phone. Then I smiled and dialed 911. Tyler's eyes widened. "Are we in trouble?" "No," I said. "You're not." When the dispatcher answered, I explained everything. I gave them Jake's name, his address, my address, and the fact that he had repeatedly abandoned his children at my home without permission. The police arrived about 15 minutes later. 2 officers spoke with me, while another sat with the kids. I showed them every text. There were dozens. Watching them again. "Can you keep them tonight?" "Running late." "Don't make this a big deal." One message from 3 weeks earlier simply said, "I'm leaving them at your place. Don't be difficult." The officer looked at me. "Has this happened before?" "More times than I can count." "Did you ever report it?" "No." He nodded. "Then we need to document it now." Jake called while the officers were still there. I put him on speaker. "What the hell did you do?" he shouted. "I called 911. "You called 911 on me? You left your kids on my porch without asking. Their family, their children." There was silence. Then Jake said, "Mom and Dad are going to destroy you." I looked at the officer. "I think they can hear you." Jake hung up. 20 minutes later, Mom and Dad showed up. Mom stormed toward me. "How could you embarrass your brother like this?" I stepped aside. "Ask him why he left his kids here. He needed help." He didn't ask. Dad pointed at me. "You've always been selfish." I pulled out my phone. "I've got 2 years of messages." Dad stopped talking. I opened the first one, then another, then another. Mom's face changed. The officer asked Jake to come home and speak with them. He arrived 40 minutes later, still wearing the clothes he'd apparently planned to wear for his date. He tried explaining that he thought I would obviously watch the kids. The officer didn't argue with him. He simply told Jake that repeatedly leaving children with someone without consent could create serious legal consequences. Jake looked at me. "You're really doing this?" I nodded. Yes. That night, the kids went home with Jake under the officer's instructions. Child Services followed up the next week. For once, I didn't answer Jake's calls. I didn't argue with Mom. I didn't defend myself to Dad. Instead, I made one decision. I stopped protecting Jake from the consequences of his own choices. I sent Mom and Dad a folder containing screenshots of every message Jake had ever sent me. I included dates, times, and the messages where he admitted leaving the kids without asking. Mom called immediately. "You didn't have to send all that." "Yes, I did. He's your brother." "I know. You could have handled this privately." I tried. She went quiet. Then she said, "What do you want from us?" "Nothing." I hung up. Then I changed my locks. A week later, Jake came to my house. He stood on the porch holding Lily's backpack. "I just need you to watch them for 2 hours." I opened the door halfway. "No." He stared at me. "You're really going to do this?" I looked at the backpack, then at him. "Yeah." He shifted his weight. "Come on, we're family." I didn't answer. He waited another few seconds. Then he turned around and walked back toward his car. I closed the door. For the first time, nobody was standing behind me telling me to be understanding. Nobody was assuming my house was a free daycare. Nobody was deciding that my time belonged to somebody else. And nobody was leaving children on my porch. Not anymore.